So today, what brings me here is I'm going to show you how to make a turducken, but we're going to start with a simple chicken. Turducken is called the Frankenbird. Frankenbird is a chicken inside of a duck inside of a turkey. The recipe itself, it's people think that it kind of came from this century and it represents maybe American gluttony, and I disagree completely because I read that back in the day when George Washington, when Lincoln, when all these great forefathers were trying to rally the troops, what they would do is they would throw a big celebration, a big party, and part of that party was actually part barbecue, I would say. And they would actually go further than the turducken, and they would take a quail, stuff the quail inside of the chicken inside of a duck, and then the duck inside of a turkey, and then the turkey inside of a sheep, and then the sheep inside of a cow, and then roast it. That's pretty cool. So today we're going to actually just stick to fowl. We're going to stick to birds, and maybe on the next demo, if I convince you that this is a cool idea, maybe we go into a whole cow. Cool? First part of this whole shebang is, thank you. This first part of the whole shebang is I'm going to show you how to debone a chicken. It's really simple. If you've never done it, it's going to takes a little bit of time, and it takes a little bit of patience. But it's much better if you take your time in the kitchen. And as a youngster, I still think I'm relatively young, but as a youngster, I used to rush things a lot. And as I'm getting a little bit older, and like I said, I haven't aged that much, but I'm learning to kind of slow down in the kitchen. And the thing is, we live in such a fast-paced society, and sometimes we just forget to kind of take a break, chill, cook, take it easy. Your food's gonna come out better. You're gonna prevent a lot of fires, and you're just gonna have better tasting food. You don't have to kill your food with a lot of heat. Anyway, about the chicken, it was already been taken out of the package, obviously already rinsed off, dried a little bit. Even though chicken is pretty simple, we like to complicate things as chefs, and especially for this recipe, we're gonna take all the bones out because we're gonna put one bird inside of the other. You wanna cut any excess fat that's all around. Not very sharp shear, but we'll make it happen. Any excess fat inside of the bird is actually just gonna create more and more and more fat, then you're gonna have too many drippings. You could just remove that. If you're making stock, which I think is the key to Thanksgiving, you should make chicken stock. You're gonna have a lot of little parts. The key to good turkey is gonna be low heat, a little moisture barrier that we put a little cheesecloth with, which I'll show you in a minute, and broth. Because normally you take your turkey, you leave it resting, right? It gets a little cool. You put it back in the oven, it's gonna dry out. What people do is they either serve a cold bird, or you put it back in the oven, and that's, you never, no one, maybe I do it sometimes when I'm really lucky, that you actually plan to cook the bird with enough time. And if you guys do, you're already ahead of the game and way better than me, because I wait until last minute for all this. With chicken stock, you could actually take your turkey, and you can slice your turkey, and you can pour the chicken broth right over it. And that's gonna kind of just to make it warm enough for you to enjoy, and it's gonna give it a little bit of moisture. And that's always been my key to good, moist breast. All right. After you remove that part, take out all the innards, this is great also for stock. I keep all that, and I roast it a little bit, throw it in a pot with some carrots, some onions, some celery, boil it with water, let it boil all day. And anything you make in Thanksgiving, just throw in the pot. Like any leftover little trimmings from herbs, from whatever you can find, maybe except eggs. I wouldn't put eggs in there. Just boil it. That's going to give you great, great, great chicken stock. Anyway, to the back of this bird, you want to follow the spine. You're going to cut around it. You could actually do both sides. Ooh. All right. After you take that out, sometimes I like to go back in there and just take that little nugget right there. Ooh. They're called the oysters, and they're one of my favorite parts. And I just cook them stovetop, and I just eat them because you get hungry. It takes a long time to cook a bird, you know? You got to snack as you go along. Now, there's a couple of things you can do there. You could actually leave the wings on if you want. I don't. I actually just take them off. And again, you could either roast them and eat them as a little snack. I'm a huge chicken wing fan. My little brother Johnny loves wings. If anybody who's watching the show, he bothers me about making wings all the time. No, it doesn't bother. I love making wings for that little rugrat. I love it. Take the wing out. All right. You have this part of the chicken without the wings, without anything. With a nice little sharp knife. Here, I actually do it this way. You just have to follow the rib cage. Oh, I left a little piece right there. And if you can see, the rib cage is going to really guide you. You can actually see where you can cut because the ribs, and it just peels. As long as you have a sharp knife, you'll be okay. I actually like to cut right here. Let's cut this bad boy. Let's do the other side. I'm going to cut all around it. Boom. Hair's getting in my way. Boom. The leg is going to be the same thing. You basically just want to cut all the way around. Once you've taken off most of that, I kind of butchered that part a little bit. You literally just want to reach in, cut that wishbone out, and pull it. And if that works, that would be, hold on. There you go. And literally you pull the whole breastbone out. And it'll, as you see, I left a little part in there, but we'll fix it. And I should probably be wearing gloves for this, but I don't want it home. Take this part out. Hold that down. We're going to take this one because it kind of broke on me a little bit. Traditionally, the little middle bone, the breastbone, will come out. If it breaks on you, like I said, you know what? It happens all the time. All right. All the carcass, all that stuff, throw in a pot if you want. Boil it as it is. Or what I like to do is actually throw the bones on a roasting pan. Put a little bit of salt and pepper. Not even salt and pepper. You don't have to do that. I do it. I think just because I'm accustomed to seasoning things before I throw them in the oven. But you can literally just roast it. By roasting, you're going to bring out all those flavors, even burn it a little bit. And then you could actually put that in your stock. It's going to give it more robust flavor. Normally when you taste chicken stock from the supermarket, it tastes really light. If you roast your bones, you're actually going to get like a darker, richer stock. All right. So now to this part. Take that out. You literally just want to take the bone, and at this point, you're not even cutting. You're almost like stripping the meat from the bone. And take that, and you literally just follow, I don't know if you cameras here, you literally just follow the bone itself. See how the bone is there? Cut around, cut around. So you strip that down. Boom. Then you take the leg itself, and you just cut around it. And literally, it'll come out. Take the other side. Let's do that part. You normally want either melted butter or cream butter, soft butter. You just leave it outside and it'll get soft. In this case, because we have to do this emo, we're going to just melt it. Yeah, you can melt that and then chop some herbs, throw it right in. So you're going to create basically what's a compound butter, but it's melted. It's going to be your base in liquid. Nothing goes better with turkey than cranberries and butter. It's going to make your turkey divine. All these parts, that's what's going to make great broth. I know a lot of times we go to the supermarket and we get like chicken breasts already deboned, but what made and what still makes French cuisine so fantastic is that they never wasted anything. Like whatever you had, you make it happen. And I'm convinced, and I actually told my girlfriend this, and she doesn't like the idea. But I'm convinced that the reason some of these dishes were created and taste so great is because as time goes on, you develop flavors. Like wine, you let it ferment for a little bit longer, and you're actually going to create better flavors. Which brings me to stock. If you let that boil, 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 you'll be developing all those great flavors that you're not going to find in canned broth. Down, cut all the way around. Like I said, all that stuff into an oven, roast it. I would do like 500, 450. Roast it for like 15 minutes, just until you start to get color. Honestly, it doesn't even matter whether it cooks or not. You just want to toast it. Actually, I'll show you how to make a roulade, which is basically the same concept. This is, we'll call this the beginner's turducken. You know, a roulade is basically a roll, which this is really great. You do it with like, you can do it like chicken cordon bleu. I don't know if you guys have seen it. It's basically a breast of chicken, pounded out and rolled, and inside of it you'll have normally like asparagus, you'll have cheese. I normally put either maybe ham. Anyway, you basically roll that up and you bread it and you fry it. This case, we're actually gonna roast this. I wouldn't completely always recommend with just chicken to roast, but it's a good healthy alternative. We're still gonna use the cheesecloth. We're gonna use all the same elements. So a roulade to roll. We're gonna get some seasoning. It's gonna be very simple. Some salt, some pepper. Let's get some herbs. We're gonna get some herbs. Yeah, 86 cilantro. I'm gonna use it here. It's gonna make the bird delicioso. We're actually gonna put herbs all in the inside of this bird and all around. What happens a lot of times when you roast here, honey, when you roast birds with herbs on the outside, they get burnt. This is actually a great technique. We're gonna put cheesecloth around it, and it's not gonna get burnt. Some herbs right inside, very simple. Now we're gonna roll it. I normally would roll something like this into itself. A little roll. Done. Now we're gonna do the technique that I said before. We're gonna wrap it in cheesecloth. What's really cool about this is when you go to restaurants and you always see like the filet mignon is in perfect shape, or you see like a lamb, like the rack of lamb is in perfect shape, or you'll see certain cuts, or you go to your supermarket and they'll have, or your local butcher, and they'll have the whole filet and it's tied up. A lot of times with that, or a lot of times without it, it gets a little deformed. When you tighten it up, it cooks better, it cooks even, and at the same time, it actually keeps the same shape, which for me, working at a restaurant, is the best thing. You want uniformity, and you want something that looks actually nice. All right. You can literally put herbs right on. We're going to season all around because we haven't seasoned this side yet. All right, so this is what happens. You can do this, you can literally do this with just roasting a chicken. The whole idea here behind the cheesecloth is gonna hold all the butter that we're gonna put around, and it's actually gonna roast chicken much better. Like normally you put butter, it melts off, right? Well, this is kind of like putting a sponge right on top of it. I think it's pretty cool. You just literally wrap it. All right, so we wrap this bad boy up. It's like a little sausage when you're making like terrines of foie gras and things like that. They normally roll it like that. And they also refer to it as a torchon. First part we're gonna roll is the end. You roll it, tie the first part, make it nice and tight. Doom, doom, doom. All right. So you have your roll initially. You can roast it just like that, but I like to add a couple more strings. Just to keep it, and I'm gonna start on this side actually. Boom. I don't tie it super tight, but I tie it just tight enough that it starts to contain its shape. All right. That's basically your, you trim everything just so it looks nice. Take any extra string that you have. I don't know if this is going to cut through, but we're going to hope. Yeah. All right. So now you have your roulade, your torchon, your little bird ready to go into the oven and be happy. Now we're going to do the butter. Do we have the butter? I'll take some garlic and I'll just cut it in half and I'll literally throw it in the butter and just kind of let it melt down, cooks a little bit, keep it on really low heat, and all that, all those herbs. If you put it too high, you're gonna burn the herbs, you're gonna burn the garlic. Put it kind of really low. It only has to not even simmer. Just as long as it's hot, it'll cook it through. It'll start infusing all the butter with nice garlic, and then you actually have a flavored butter, which I think is fantastic. I do that with a lot of oils. Like I love rosemary and garlic oil. My favorite thing to cook with is rosemary and garlic oil. I love it. I take some rosemary, I throw it in a pot with a little bit of oil. I literally just keep it warm on the stove. You go back to it. You can even leave it there for a couple of hours. As long as it's low, it'll be fine. And you start just walking around the house, and it's just wafting of rosemary and garlic, and it gets me going. If you want to know what's the key to my heart, it's a little bit of that. A little bit of that. I'll even start doing it now, just so you can understand where this is happening. So there's a little bit of herbs right inside of it, and you have butter, right? You can do this with, I'm going to do this with my turkey also. You could also do this with olive oil. I'm going to do it with butter because that's what I'm going to do for Thanksgiving. All right, so we're going to baste this thing. Everybody's heard of basting? All right. All right. Make sure there's a little bit of butter or a little bit of oil at the bottom again. You could do this with olive oil if you don't want to use the butter. I just love butter. It tastes delicious. Um, the way I would normally cook this is I would start it up in a really, really high oven, about 500 degrees. And something I would recommend that I've done, and over the years, the second cookbook and the first cookbook, and I noticed that ovens are really not trustworthy. They are going to do this the best they can to mess up your plans. So get yourself a nice little oven thermometer. Because even brand new ovens, it's never the same. Like the temperature inside, it's just not. I have a thermometer in my freezer, in my fridge, and in my oven, and that's going to guarantee you good results. And even then, I have a thermometer that for these specifically, I have a thermometer which is a probe thermometer that you put inside of it and has a long string or metal string. You put it inside, and the thermometer itself, the meter, you put outside, and it tells you when it's reached the right temperature. That is the best thing I've ever bought. I have to tell you, it gets things right on. There's something called in cooking called carryover cooking, which means you take your turkey, you take your meat, you take anything that's been on a grill, that's been in a hot surface, you take it off. It's going to continue cooking because it's hot. It feeds on itself. Energy feeds on itself. So what you want to do is you always want to pull things out a little bit earlier. You know, if for example, everybody says you should cook turkey, the breast to about 160. I don't. I keep it even way below that. If I can pull it out at 140, I'll do 140. And I'll take it out before. It's going to continue cooking. And again, you could always cook something a little bit more. You can't go back, you know? The oven's at 350. We're going to pretend the oven's at 500. And I normally like to put a rack right in the middle. Right in the middle for cakes, right in the middle for turkey, for anything that you're doing. It goes in there, it's going to roast. What I end up doing is every 5 minutes, I open the oven and I brush it with a little bit more butter. If you're doing the turducken, if you're doing a turkey, you're going to have all the drippings from the outside. I actually take all that and I brush it. You got to baste. Basting is so important. For the turducken that I was going to show you, something that I wanted to just mention on turkeys. I'm a huge fan of soaking your birds. The bird, it bakes about 10 minutes of 500. Drop the temperature down to 250. Let the bird come to 150. If you're really nervous, let it come to 160. That's all you need. Pull it out and let it rest. All birds, turkeys, meats, actually all meats, period, not just birds. All meats, you need to let them rest. What ends up happening is all the pressure from the outside that you're cooking is pressing down on the meat. And as you're doing that, if you cut into it, all the juice is leaked out. So what you want to do is you want to let it chill. You know, you want to let it rest. It's kind of like if you had, here, I'll give you, where are the gloves? Oh, here. This is what happens, right? You have a meat that's been pressurized. And as soon as you cut it, that happens, right? All the juice is going to squirt out. If you let it rest and you just place the glove down and let the air come out, The same thing. You let a meat rest. You let all the juices that have been pushed to the middle kind of come back out. You're gonna have a juicy piece of bird, a juicy steak, a juicy everything. Bigger birds need a little longer. So if you cook a bird for like 6 hours, I would probably leave it for at least an hour. That's why I always undercook things. You could always undercook it and then finish it because it's gonna continue cooking. If it's resting for an hour, a lot of times in barbecue cooking, what you end up doing is you take either your ribs or your roasts or whatever you're doing on the grill, and you take it off and you put it in a cooler, or you wrap it in a pot. And what ends up happening is it relaxes and it continues cooking, but it continues cooking really, really slow. We're gonna go to the bird, because we actually have a finished product. All right. So you see all these juices that we have, those delicious, delicious juices right there? That's because the meat is rested. So all those juices came out. It's not obviously the pan where it was roasted. All those juices leak out slowly. You just got to let it do it. If you cut it into it, all those juices are going to rush out. You're going to have a lot of liquid on your pan. I would also say if you're roasting something, try not to use a shallow pan, especially bigger birds, bigger cuts. I like to use something a little bit deeper for two reasons. One, if you're leaking a lot of oil or a lot of things that are coming out of the bird, I'll tell you another story. I did roast a pheasant in my house. The pheasant was about the size of this thing. It was before I moved. I had a tiny little oven, and I put the pheasant right in. No problem. I could do it. It was cool. But I think it was the neck. No, it was the tail. The tail was sticking out of the pan, and it started melting, and the oil started falling into the bottom of my oven. And when I opened my oven, it was on fire. So this is part of the reason why I use a deeper roasting pan. The second reason is normally when I cook a bigger bird, I start with the meat, the breast, side down. Normally you're going to get a lot of cooking from the top. The pan's going to take a little while to heat up. So what ends up happening is you have a dry bird on the breast. If you put the bird upside down while you're starting to cook it, the other parts have a little time to cook more, and then the breast itself is still kind of chilled. I've actually even put a little bit of ice on the breast before I put it in the oven, just to give it a little extra time so it doesn't start cooking so fast. So I would say use a pan. So you have the bird itself. See how it's still wrapped up. Oof. See how this works. You continue basting it over and over again. Now we're going to unwrap this bad boy. It's like operation. The thing about the cheese puff, like I said, is it protects. It protects your bird itself, and it holds that. It holds the butter or the oil. It holds it right on the skin, and it continues to roast really nicely. All right. There you go. This is what I do. Oh, all right. I came apart a little bit. That's all right. This is the most delicious stock you will ever have. Look at that. Look at that. I don't even have to make gravy. All that juice. You have a little spoon? You see the viscosity of that? See how thick it is? You see like the natural gravy that you already have from this bird? Look at that. That's the kind of gravy that you want. You're probably going to need a little bit of salt and a little bit of pepper. Yeah. Not even. Nope. It's a little salty, actually. Do it with a little bit of stock that you had from beforehand, and actually add a little bit of water. It's a little strong. That'll be your gravy right there. Now, your bird's rested. It's done. It's ready to go. A part that I'm going to explain to you this real quick because I did it, or the recipe calls for something a little different, and I think this is one of the coolest things. When you do any kind of birds or turkey or whatnot, I like to put flavors inside of the bird. I think we all like a little bit of stuff inside. I don't do stuffing. I never do stuffing. I think it actually just doesn't help the bird at all because by the time the heat gets to the stuffing, because you're stuffing the the cavity that allows air to actually flow through it. So I never do stuffing. I do stuffing on the side. But I do like to put herbs and what they call aromatics in the middle. Take some rosemary. I love rosemary, and I'm going to keep saying rosemary. Take some garlic, because I love garlic, and I'm going to keep saying garlic because I like it. And normally I do either some apples and some pears. You cut them up, rough chop, put them on a plate, throw them in the microwave, 10 minutes. Actually, some cinnamon, maybe some star anise. Take something that really smells delicious, throw that in the microwave for 10 minutes. Just let it go, 5 minutes at a time, and it's going to actually start to cook. It's going to start to perfume the entire microwave and the entire kitchen. By the time you grab that and you put it into the bird, and then you go to roast it, you actually have all those flavors that are permeating through the inside and are going to just flavor your bird a lot better. You know, I love stuff like, and not only is it good for the bird, it makes the house smell delicious. I would say I normally would present something like this. It kind of broke a little bit on the side here, but we're just going to ignore that part. Let's figure out which part is what. And done right, you should be able to see the turkey, the chicken in the center, and all the darker meat is all your duck. And we actually made a compound butter, and every time I would put a bird inside of a bird, you put a little bit of that compound butter with herbs. Well, that's just going to start infusing. You're going to see a lot of recipes for turducken that actually have stuffing in between the layers. Not a big fan. Stuffing is all bread, right? Or rice, or some kind of starch. And what does starch do? It absorbs things. Why would you want to absorb all that delicious juice that can actually be basting your meat? So I don't do that. All the fat from the duck is going to melt right off and like render and actually just, That's what I do. And you could actually see this one. You see all the different layers. And what I normally do is I actually cut it this way, because otherwise it's not, you can't cut it. I put it on its side. And I make slices like that. I was trying to get the electric knife because I thought it'd be so cool. I've never really used an electric knife, but I own one because I like to go to flea markets and buy antique cooking stuff. And I thought for this particular moment, it would be really awesome because I've never used it. And it actually, since it's a little delicate, it just allows you to cut better slices. Or I don't know, because I've never used it, like I said. All right. And what I normally like to do is I'll present it. Here. Like I said, remember I said I pull birds at about 150? That's what I told him to pull it out at, 150. That doesn't look raw, does it? Looks juicy. Looks delicious. This is really up to you, whatever you want to use, whatever you have. But this is where you can actually have fun. And if your kids want to do this, you guys can do that too, you know? If you want some on the sides, you can. But in this case, I'm not going to. So I just want a little bit. I normally make a bouquet out of that. And I'll put some apples on the side, or some pears, or some chestnuts if you have it. And I think that's really fantastic. And then when you present it to your table, you can literally serve it like that. Take a little bit of gravy on the side. This gravy, I would probably fortify it with maybe like some port. A little bit of port. You know, I think port, something kind of like that, would go really, really well with the gaminess of the duck inside. So then I start to think about that. Or if you're making like cranberry sauce, throw a couple of cherries in there. It's about the unexpected little touches. You present it and you just go, psh, and let just the juices come down. That's it. Turducken. Be with your family, love each other. Remember, cook for the people you love, and love the people who cook for you.
This program is brought to you by Miami Culinary Institute at Miami-Dade College. For more information about the schools and the Culinarium program, please visit www.miamidadeculinary.com or call 305-237-3276.